All right, well, welcome to the Monday night match. Here's the pre-show. We're going to do this a little bit different. I got Buddy Hawkins with me this time, and we're going to do it rundown style. So welcome, Buddy. I appreciate you coming on here with me.
Oh, thank you so much. This is exciting. These guys are all so proficient on both ends. It's really exciting for me to get to see this, as a guy that's thrown as many head loops on the dummy as I've thrown heel loops on the heeling dummy. I'm still so far behind these guys in the heading, and so it's just amazing. The talent, the work, and so many of these guys have been up and down the PRCA trail on both ends, and so that's just exciting for me. To be able to show up and showcase some guys that have some versatility.
Right. So that's the format tonight. So everyone knows we've got a undercard for that 4 teams will be matching. It's all going to be switch ends today. So in the undercard, it's going to be a little bit different in the main card. How we've set this up is it's going to be a best of 7 match with the winners advancing to match each other. So it'll look like if you head in the first round, you'll head the first 2 steers, and then you'd be heeling the 3rd and 4th steers. Then you'd swap back on the 5th and then the 6th. And then for the 7th round, you get to choose which end you'd like to rope, and the team with the fastest time in the match will go last.
So potentially these guys are going to be able to close this out. They're going to potentially head to heel 2, move on. Like if somebody, if Worley and Billy Jack get off to a heater right off the bat, and Jade and Colton are having a little bit of tough luck, they may just go 4 5-second runs in a row, and this thing's over, and we're on to the next one. And then, naturally with all this talent, all these accolades, it looks like we're going to 7 on every one of them, and 15 at the end.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it looks really even on paper. The other thing that's unique about this, right? When you get to go first, you're in this weird situation where you got to make a fast enough run, and it's kind of got a different feel where when you go second, you know exactly how fast you got to be. All of it is go rounds only. So there's no average. It's go rounds only. First team to win 4 go rounds advances or wins the match. And then for the main card, first team to win 8 go rounds wins the match.
When we talked about this a while back, I think what's so interesting with the format there is I really prefer, and a lot of my success comes from events where you can think. I've won quite a few rodeos, 1-headers, whatever, but events like the Bob Feist Invitational is you kind of need to think through the day. No one, in my opinion, and all the years and videos I've watched, nobody's ever drawn 6 best cows, 6 cows in a row. They're all ducks, just ease through the barrier and run out there and catch them in 6 seconds. In a similar way in this event, sometimes it seems like when guys turn up on their first one and they put a 5-5, well, the other team, it almost makes it easier for them. I'm not saying it's easy to be 5-4, but it almost makes it a deal. Well, shoot, I just do all I can here and I'll either beat the 5-5 or I won't. But it's interesting when those teams get into that kind of middle ground of like the 6-2 or the 6-4 early on in this particular setup. And it sets it up where there's some thinking involved, because it's like, well, if the header goes an extra swing, the heeler kind of needs to throw. But if the header goes ahead and reaches and puts it on him, heeler might go a couple swings. Then we know now we've got handles coming into play, the way the head horses pull, the way the steers handle. And so very interesting within this particular format. It's hard for somebody to get to be a front runner. I think about it a lot at halftime in any particular sport, but it's like, it's so interesting if an NFL team is up 35-7 at halftime, how deflating it is for the other team. But most teams are fairly well matched. So it's like, well, if the second half goes 7-35, we've got a tied game. And I think that's very interesting within this, is if it does go 3-0 right off the bat, well, now it can go 4-0 and the other team can win it. And with the guys that we have here, all these guys have the ability to be very offensive. They also, a lot of these guys have horse showed, they're the ones that people seek to show horses. They have high level of horsemanship, very competitive, strong mental game. I got to do a deal the other day, an interview, and they were asking me, what at the top of the game, what's more important? Is it the mental or the physical? And I said, well, in order to just be good at roping, you have to have the physical. You have to have a good swing. You got to have good horsemanship. You have to have all the good. So at the highest level, it's absolutely a mind game of, the difference in 7 and 8 healers, the difference in 8s and 9s, the difference in 10s and elite 10 healers. To me, it's just between the ears. Like, sure, there's guys that are super talented with their swings and they've got the best horses, et cetera. But typically all that's going to come right back to your mind. Are you buying into what you're selling?
Well, and I think this is what's so special about this match format is it's constantly got guys thinking, just like you said, you've got runs where they have to be short 5s and 4s that we've seen in the past to times where they got to go be 7, 8, 9, 10. And it just varies every single round. And each round, one team knows what they have to be to beat the other. So it's like you constantly have a team in a short round situation all the way till the match ends. So that's what makes this really special.
And what I know so much about that is, you follow, we are creating short rounds, like you said. So it's much like, you look at the short round at Dodge City, Kansas, you look at the short round in Clovis, California, or wherever, a lot of times I wouldn't say boring, but it's a little bit mundane. 12th callback, 11th, 10th, 9, 8. We start with the money, but the money's not that good. And then you get into kind of the top 4, and, naturally a little advantage goes to the high teamer. But the other thing is when you're 4th high callback in Clovis, California, you're really not roping for the win. Now, you can press really hard and elevate your chances, but whoever's high callback has outroped you all week. So they are the favorite. So a lot of times the 4th callback's actually a little bit easier. And that's something that we've noticed in these past matches is that many times guys who get to go first have it a little bit easier from a place of, they just go ahead and turn that dial up, maybe not to red line, but they just kind of run the RPM up a little. And they're like, well, we have a lot of confidence in this team that goes behind us. And what I always think is very interesting is, how much confidence do they have in the team that's in the box? The way I think when my team's in the box has a lot to do with how much I win, and not necessarily catching the other guys steer for them, but don't miss it for them either. Don't plan on them doing great or plan on them doing terrible. And that comes back. We talk about the draw a lot in this event, but what I think is so interesting is how many times guys are just so skilled that they're able to take what would be kind of the bottom of the herd and they're able to press the barrier a little bit, use more rope, and put a lot of heat on the cow and keep the clock going slow. My personal experience team roping, one of the things I think Andrew and I have really observed in roping is the faster the steer's going, the slower the clock's going. And so in many cases, we get to thinking we need the loper if we're going to be 4. But, now team roping is really proving, well, you just go further down the arena in 4 or 5 seconds, and you're able to make that same run. So within that, these setups, the past matches, I've noticed that there's been 5-second runs made where you got guys that are heating them up, throwing it in the box, and then the run slows down a little. And then you got guys that are chasing for 4, 5, 6 swings. And then I remember a particular run when Cody Snow and Wesley Thorpe were matching Clay Tryon and Jade, and Snow and Thorpe run way out in the arena, like 5'7" in a 300-foot long arena, and they're pretty much dead 50-yard line. But they make a perfect run, take no heat off the cow. I'm going to say we see a lot of that. What I know about when you put guys that heel pretty good on the head side, they have a tendency, if they're going to go in any direction, they're going to be heating these cows up. Like they're going to keep maximum speed on them and just expect that guy back there to be able to heel them and dally and finish.
Perfect. Buddy, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll start in with this undercard. We'll kind of dive into the matchups and some of these teams right fast.
I can hardly wait.
All right, we're back from commercial, buddy. We're going to get into these undercard teams. The first matchup is going to be Tyler Worley, Billy Jack Sabins, matching Colton Smith and Jade Corkle.
Gosh. So I mean,
first guy is Tyler Worley right here.
Man, right off the bat, I think out of this deal, probably the question mark here is going to be Tyler Worley. I've been watching all these guys rope for a long time. Tyler Worley's, Arkansas kid, really handy. A lot of accolades, worked for DF Horses for quite a while, high level of horsemanship. He's rode a lot of horses, been to a lot of horse sales, showed a lot. So, we know the catching is going to be there. The trick here is he's matched up against two guys that are pro rodeo headed. So he is going to have to bring a higher level of heading than most people have ever seen out of him. Is he capable? Is the question for me right there. Absolutely capable of catching. He's a really handy guy. I think very much just like watching these videos right here, man, this guy is so handy with his rope. And, talk about overrated, underrated guys in rodeo. Is he underrated? I don't think he's underrated because he's got the accolades and I think he's got a following, and I'm a big fan. But a real talented guy. I just feel like Worley is going to be he's going to be the one today that really dictates this particular match, because we know all these guys are high level healers. And it's really going to be Worley's heading that's going to set him. He's going to be ahead or behind on the heading. And I think that, that's what you're going to have to come back to.
Right. Worley's one of those guys, extremely strong work ethic, loves to rope. He'll be in the
all
arena
the time.
All the time. And it doesn't matter, heading, healing.
Yeah. So, well, where we live, we drive by his arena. Worley's in the arena. He'll be on an Appaloosa. He'll be on a Sorrel. He'll be on a Colt. So we just know Worley's he runs them. And it's not going to be about catching for me. It's going to be about speed.
All right, well, let's get to his partner, Billy Jack Sabins. Billy Jack went to heading for a little bit. Yep. He's got a ton of experience heading compared to Worley and a lot of these guys, right?
Well, and there's some similarities there. Like I said, they work together. They rodeoed together. They wrestled with each other. Billy headed for Worley a little when he was heading. So on the healing side, we can kind of cut it short. What's wrong with Billy's healing? Nothing.
Right.
So this is also, and I think that's what's beautiful about these switch ender matches. What's going to make this undercard so fun to watch are we're getting to see these guys. We know Bill's put the time, we know he's put the effort in, but just because I went to the gym 7 years ago doesn't make me fit today. It's what I've been doing in the last 12 months, last 24 months. Billy's been back. He's on the pro rodeo trail. He's having a good winter. He's in top 5 in the world right now in the healing. Has he been putting it into the heading, and is he going to show up and show out? I'm going to let the head horses dictate a little bit of this deal too. I know in the main card this evening we're going to have some stacked head horses. With the undercard here, I'm not really sure what we're going to be able to expect with the horsepower. You put these guys on the highest level horses, and there's a very high probability that this looks like just pro rodeo teams that are going up and down the road. If they get to the mid-level horses here, get to using their ropes a little bit more, I think that's where you can see big runs, fancy stuff. You can also see the wheels come off.
Well, and I think for Billy Jack, one thing that's unique, they're DF horses. They've got a big string of head horses, heel horses. It's a great horse program out there.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's one thing that you're going to see as he kind of comes through is you're going to see this guy on a lot of different horses, and they're all going to be pretty high end. Well,
that's exactly right. You really expect nothing else. When I think of team roping, I think of horses. I'm working on building horses, building my herd all the time. I haven't even got into the breeding side of it personally. I've been doing this for 23 years. When I think of name brand horses within rodeo, you go to Dean Tufton, you go to DF. Those are top names, and so within that's exactly right. Is he doesn't really have a very good excuse. Better be mounted.
All right, Jade Corkle, obviously one of the greatest healers, if not the greatest healer of all time, right?
Yes, I come back. When I think about Billy and Jade, naturally Jade, we've got the gold buckles and the more NFR qualifications, but he had a short window in there. Some people have probably already forgot about, but 10 years ago, Jade went and bought the highest level head horses that were available in the entire world. And he switched ahead and he headed for a while in a similar way to Billy Jack and put everything he had into it, worked really hard. And in my opinion at that time, there wasn't the reason for him to go back to healing was because of how good he healed, not because he was having trouble with his heading. So within that, and I think the thing, that I see with Jade's heading, Jade looked like a professional header. He went like blow, stick, coil back, good handles, all of that. The thing that's going to be interesting here is, he's probably not going to be on one of the greatest head horses in the world. I guess we'll see here in a minute what he decides to ride. But within that, what I think is very interesting is Jade's also a gamer. He's a guy that it comes down to the end of it. If you can put on paper what he needs to do to close this match, I would not be surprised to see him go .05 at the barrier, throw his entire rope, tight fit the horns, and set him up really good for Colton to finish the deal. And so I'm expecting really, really great things. And of the guys right there, he's got the most accomplishments. We're talking, NFR qualifications for Worley and Billy Jack, buckles for Jade, and that's, he is one of the GOATs.
Well, this is a rundown too, buddy. So one thing that I thought's unique, this is obviously a run from the match format. And one thing that we're going to see with Jade that's so unique is his ability to, when something different, something awkward happens in a run, like for example, this steer right here that gives him a funky jump.
Yeah.
He still can make things happen, right?
He's an animal, man. And that's what it's just almost hard to talk about his heeling on here, because it's like you put him in any circle, in any generation, in any area, and he almost doesn't fit. And to the untrained eyes, if you want to pause it right there, but to the untrained eye, because of the level of stress that you see from this guy, you a lot of times just think, well, everything was set up really good, but I mean, if I go from this horse's tail to his chest, I think a lot of times what we end up doing there is we try to go from we watch a horse's head, but their head doesn't actually create the travel there. So if I go from his head to his chest and then draw an arrow, that guy, that horse is going straight down the arena in this direction, which naturally, if this is his target somewhere in this area, he's headed toward his target. But the problem is, if we go tail to chest and we incorporate this steer's head into this angle here, because the head of the horse doesn't pull him down the arena, but the head of the steer does, he's headed this direction. The reason in most of Jade's runs, the reason that people don't give him quite as much credit, not that he doesn't get credit, quite the credit he's due, is this guy looks like this steer's right here underneath his bridle reins and headed, across the arena this way. Like, there's no stress, there's no worry. If we can go ahead and roll this forward in slow-mo, but he is riding for a turn that basically doesn't happen. And what I mean by that is the strides coming through this turn go from way out in front of his horse to directly underneath his bridle reins, almost to the left side of his horse in 3 consecutive strides there. So what I'm getting to is, if we go right back to that, say the first legal hop, if you want to consider the end of the switch, the first legal hop, Jade is nowhere around the first legal. If this steer hits and right there, pause it, we say that right there, this is legal. It is impossible for him to get his rope into that window. And if we slow-mo that forward, though, notice his swing has been over here the whole time. Well, now it would have been possible for his rope to fit inside that window, but he has kept his swing here. And this guy, to me, you want one thing that sets him up. His swing has been coming through this area with the most power, being right there on that X the whole time. What's special about this guy is how he reads cattle. He put his swing where this stride was going to be right here. This cow hit here, he hit here, and he had his swing here the entire time so that he was going to be able to catch him. And so what's special about that is, if you read cattle like that, then you can read them in the Brandon pin, you can read them in the heading, you can read them in the busting. And truly, this guy, a lot of people don't know, but man, he was a very competitive calf roper. He's been competitive in the busting. I actually, this timed event championships going on, I was actually thinking about that, and I was like, man, I'm guessing, I know he had a little bit of health problems when he was younger with his knees, and I'm guessing that's why he wasn't a big contender, was the bulldog and in the timed events, because when it comes to head and heel and calf roping and busting, anything you can do with a rope horseback, that guy's at the the top of the list. If you pulled the bulldogging out, a lot of people would go to the timed events, and a lot of people would be really competitive. We'd probably still see Trevor there. But within that guy's cow sense is so high that I think that comes back to, what's the determining factor. And this guy reads cattle like no one else.
All right, let's get to Colton Smith. Colton just entered the timed event finals. First time I think we've really seen him heal a lot on a big stage. I know he's won a lot healing, but first time for me that I know that he's got out there. So this is a guy, he's got the accolades heading. Yeah. But healing, I don't know as much about him, right?
Yeah. So early on for me, I remember Colton, I'm going to say this is 2012 to 14 range, U.S. finals. He's like an 8 healer. Honestly, to me at that time, what I saw out of Colton, and this has a lot to do with your region, but Canada is shorter barriers, usually softer cattle, faster setups. So when I saw Colton in the States at that time, what my opinion early on was, hey, here's a healer that heads. He's in the States. He's not going to get a big time header. He because his healing, is at just a good level. So he's going to the heading, in my opinion, at that time. I think it was right in there that he won the Canadian title. But it's right in there. What I was seeing with this guy was his healing at that time more correct than his heading. Like, I thought he had a good swing. He had a really nice roan horse that he was healing on at the time. His numbers went really high. He healed Mexican cows at the U.S. finals really good, which is one of the hardest places. At that time, Oklahoma City, smaller arena, big steers. He really impressed me in the healing at that time. And then when I watched him head, frankly, and he's one of my dear friends, but when I watched him head, I was like, he's an amateur header. And that has to do with your region, man. If you come from the Southeast or you come from the far north, your heading is usually like 4 foot under barriers, smaller cows, and you try to smack and stack them. Within that, naturally, he's went on. He's one of the more accomplished guys, Bob Feist, champ, NFR header. Really, when I look at this list, my opinion of this is that Colton is going to show out as a very professional healer among 3 pro healers. He's got 3 of the best healing guys, probably 3 of the top 15 healers that he's healing against. I think he's going to look like a pro with these guys, and then naturally advantage him when it goes to heading. So within that, kind of what I'm playing out as I'm looking in, forecasting this match, I think Colton is going to be rock solid. I think Jade's going to be rock solid. And I actually, what I forecast is if Billy Jack and Worley, if they get on tilt a little bit right here, it's going to be theirs. They're going to outrun them on time. But I'm having a hard time forecasting anybody getting by Colton and Jade on catches. I think these guys are going to catch their way through this. And naturally, Worley uses a smaller loop. Really, Billy's kind of a smaller loop for the size of guy that he is. Those guys are going to be shutting these runs down at a pace where I think Colton and Jade, if this is a 7 header, advantage them. On 1 headers, I think this is a fair fight, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Right. Well, I think that's what's so fun about Colton, to hear that from you, because I think he's one of the most correct headers now. And to hear that, that's kind of how he gets his start.
Sure.
Super,
and back to that,
exciting to kind of look for, right?
Yeah. And back to that, to reiterate, he was a professional header. It wasn't that he had a bad swing. It wasn't that his horsemanship was terrible. And I know at a point in there, he actually went, one of the guys who's actually went out and sought coaching on, mental coaching. He sought horsemanship coaching with Dean Tufton. Like, this is a guy who has put into the game of rodeo what people are doing in other sports. And so within that, I have the absolute utmost respect for him as an athlete. And then we'll get back to those timed events. But man, he was the guy that impressed me the most. The first steer wrestling run at the timed events, I don't know this guy to have ever jumped a steer, and I'm not a steer wrestler. But what makes sense to me in team roping is, you have to get the body of the steer in the right place for him to make the maneuvers that you want. What I thought happened right off the bat at the timed events is Colton was very clear. He had a lot of clarity. He got down on a steer, probably a good steer, but he put his body in the spot that he wanted to bulldog him and started off looking like he looked like Trevor did, because it's like these guys aren't going to have the advantage over Cody Cabral or a professional steer wrestler at the timed events. But what they're able to do is get those steers in a place where they can manipulate them. And I think in a very similar way on this match, I think these guys are going to be able to put the steers exactly where they want them. And like I said, I'm seeing 7 for 7 out of that team. And then I think Billy Jack and Worley, it's going to be up to them. Are they going to turn up the heat, or are they going to let the consistency beat them?
Right. All right. Well, let's get into our next undercard. We've got Douglas Rich and Dustin matching Junior D's and Tanner Tomlinson. I think this is quite the matchup. Obviously, Douglas Rich, for the guys that don't know, they cannot have a slide rope in without Douglas Rich and Dustin. Those guys love to head and heel and max out on entries.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if anybody runs more competitive steers in the world. And if you really, these guys 10 years ago, they were probably in grade school, but 10 years ago, in the last 10 years, man, I think Doug and Dustin run the most steers competitively. If I was paying close enough attention, I think Doug Rich is fresh off a heading and heeling win at the timed event championships. I think he was helping Dozier on both ends up there. Man, he showed up, showed out. That's a lot of pressure. I've had to help in a few different places. Somebody's matching for a saddle at the end of the roping or something. Showing up and you're roping basically for somebody else to win something is so much pressure. So this Doug Rich, man, to me, very fundamentally correct. He's had plenty of success at the rodeos, but where this guy showed up, Texas jackpots, and he wins a ton of money heading and heeling at Texas jackpots, hardest place in the world to win. And he wins a whole bunch. And just kind of like this run right here, I know Bubba's trying to take care of him, but not every steer is going to take it perfect. This Doug Rich is a catching son of a gun. And, I bring him back to kind of what we were talking about with Colton a little bit ago. It's like, I feel like he's very fundamentally sound. The other deal that sneaks up with Doug is he's going to be in these slide ropings where he's 1 second different than Dustin Agates, and they're just going at him all night long, entered 29 times.
Yeah.
And Doug can turn it up to just throwing it in the box, lofting it, getting a lot of necks and a lot of catches. Him and Andrew joke a lot about roping the shoulders, start with the shoulders and then the horns and then the nose and then turn them. Within that, Doug Rich is not a slow header. He's going to catch his way into a position a lot of times where he heats him up at the end and wins big checks. Naturally, we kick it back over here to Dustin, and our awareness of him as a healer is a little bit less. We see him a little bit. I heard our good buddy Farron Lucero a while back talk about somebody being sharp. He said scalpel. Yeah. And I thought, man, when I think about that, I think about like Dustin, like his stuff is sharp. If he goes to no coils, it's sharp. When he goes to 2 coils, it's sharp. When he throws his whole rope, he smokes the horns sharp. And his heeling is a whole lot like that. He's probably used a little softer heel rope, a little bit less rope than a lot of guys do. He puts it on the leg really sharp, like he's going to hit the leg sharp, a lot of bottom strand through, and he kind of heads the feet. And so within that, what I'm seeing here is absolutely Dustin's fundamentals are good, but I'm seeing Doug as a guy that's probably going to catch a bunch in a row here. And then I feel like Dustin is probably going to be heating them up on both ends. And so, at the end of the day, one thing I have so much respect about Dustin Agates is this guy, he wins and loses on his terms. When, it's like you get in, if you want to think about it like you're getting in the cage with him, he's wild. He's ruthless. And just like you see on these videos, man, and like I said, to me, his heeling is as close to his head as it can be. He gets to the end of the turn. He's got great hand-eye coordination, table tennis, pickleball, this guy, he sees it and he does it. He puts his rope where he wants his rope. He expects it to go on. He pulls his slack before it hits the horns. Same thing in the heeling, just great hand-eye coordination. So what I'm seeing with this guy is, if Doug's going to hold his own out there, and I think it's Dustin, put him against anybody in the world, and it's hard to beat. We were talking about that a little while back. We were at, watching the wild card over there at San Antonio, and before it started, everybody's like, who is it? And it's like, well, if it was 5 teams, 50 teams, 500 teams, advantage Dustin.
Yeah.
Dustin does it on his terms. And so within that, it's going to be up to a team to always be waiting for him, put the pressure on him. Maybe he gets a barrier. Maybe he gets his horse tightened up and it gets a little bit hard for him. Man, if that doesn't happen, Dustin's going to be hard to get by.
The unbelievable rope control.
Yes.
That's maybe best I've ever seen.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about Junior D's.
Well, talk about a hard conversation here. If we want to talk talent, D's has leaned in a little bit different direction than Dustin with regards, I think he's done a lot more of the horsemanship. I think he's done a lot more of the, blow stick, handle, all of the above. But man, we got them, right here is kind of neat. They're going back to back with the same partner on these videos. But hey, D's is second to none on talent, ability, speed, consistency. What I think Dees has done here, and you can kind of notice it just like with his heading, is, man, he puts a little more on there than he needs, and this is probably going to come back, to a little bit more of the style of roping that I've done a lot of my life is, Andrew's kind of a big loop, big money guy. I'm kind of a big loop, big money guy. Dees is a little bit in that direction. He's going to get a lot of checks. Within that though, man, Dees can go 3 back, smoke the horns, have his horse in a good position to pull the cow, and make the heeling really good back there. So when I'm thinking about Dees, I don't see that he's less talented. I think what he's decided is he's picked runs that maybe are going to get beat when everything works perfect for Dustin. But I do not necessarily think that he's going to be, far behind him. I don't think this is going to be a 6-second, 4-second match. I think it's going to be a lot of like 5-5s and 5-2s, and it can go either direction right there.
Well, and I think too, he's so good at using his horses, and he's just got that horse talent. Also his heeling, that's something that you do get to see it, but I haven't got to witness him heel as much as like Dustin and Doug.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I'm gonna put for Dees there, I think he's mentally, I think he's really strong, but I think that's exactly something to say is, we can't judge people from practice pin, we can't judge them from slides, but what have they done on the U.S. finals? What did they do in the junior world when they headed 2 and heeled 3? What did they do at places like that? And I'm gonna say out of this match, Dees probably has less heeling experience. Dustin and Doug have they've been switching it up for quite a while at a lot of places. As far as I know, Dees has always been a professional rodeo header. He hasn't ever really tried the heeling at the highest level. And then Doug and Dustin, Doug's always heeled. Dees is always headed. Dustin's always headed. But back to that, man, Dees is kind of right there with Dustin to me on the heel. And if he rides a really clean corner and the steer's there, man, he's going to sweep the legs and dally good. And those guys they're very similar on that. What I'm going to throw out there is I give Dees advantage in the heading on numbers. I give Dustin advantage on time. And then I think the heeling's a little bit of a toss up. I'm guessing they're both 9 heelers and they look like it.
Right. And one thing that will, just so everyone knows, I think Dustin will be heading against Tanner.
There you go.
And so Dees will be heading against Doug.
Well, and that comes back a little bit to me when we go thinking about Tanner Tomlinson. He to me, he wins and loses on his terms too.
Yeah.
He's a lot like Dustin. So what we're going to get to see is who knows what kind of sparks are going to fly. I'm thinking about this like a sword fight in the dark. And, one of these guys is going to swing and the other one's going to swing and just cha-ching these blades. And then it happens again. And back to that, well, we know that basically goes to like, maybe it's like 4-1, 4 flat, 3-9, 3-8, and I don't, this setup probably doesn't allow for that. But my point being, man, these guys, he's another guy to me, similar on talent. I think when you look at like his swing and Dee's swing, they're a lot alike. Man, he's another guy that goes for the sharp more so than he goes for the extra. Like he's another sharp header. He hits the horns, but when it hits the horns, he's pulling his slack, he's moving his horse over, he's putting it on the saddle horn, and he's setting him up for Patty, or in this case, setting him up for Dees. But man, I think this is a guy, a lot of people don't even know, but this guy, he's went on and had some accolades in the heeling. I actually think most of his high school career, he was a heeler, which wasn't so terribly long ago, Pace. While for us, but not that long for him. But he's a heeler that went on and headed. First time I hear about this guy heading, really, I knew of him as a heeler, high school rodeo, maybe high school rodeo champ. But the first time I remember him heading, he's heading for Martin, and I happened to just go back and look at UPRA results, and him and Martin Lucero every single week first. And then we go look, he's got just a nice, easy sorrel horse that he rides. And I mean, just every week he's winning first at every rodeo. I think they go on and set the record, at the amateur level. He comes in the PRCA, kind of how the PRCA goes, man. These guys are not, they're nothing nice. Try to beat Clay Trine and Clay Smith every single week. So took him a little bit of time to get a breakthrough. And then when we put him on the big stage, and so to me, he's been big stage heading and big stage heeling as much as any of these guys. And the beautiful thing is we just put 2 really offensive guys against each other here. And so it's going to be very interesting. So what I'm seeing advantage D's over Doug Rich in the heading naturally. But I think those guys are similar styles. They both can reach, but they're going to be looking for the catches. They do not like letting their partners down. On the heading, I'm not saying these other guys are looking at letting their partners down, but Dustin and Tanner take a little bit more of the perspective of we're going to do it on our terms right here.
Yeah, they're gonna go more rope sometimes than more horse, and both of them have the ability. The one thing that I find really fascinating, I've heard lots of stories about Tanner heeling and how great it was. I think he's a 9 or a 9+ healer, but I have never really seen him heel.
Well, what's so interesting about this match, if I'm looking through this entire undercard here, I think maybe Billy Jack is a 7+ header, maybe not an 8. But, our numbers in the heading go from 2 to a 9. And all these guys are 7, 8, or 9 headers. All these guys are number 9 or 10 healers. So we're dealing with the top 100 headers and healers on either end right here. If we go back to that, you take a guy like Tanner Tomlinson, sign him up with a good header for a year, he's going to be in the top 25, top 30 healers at the end of a season. The spot he's in right now, he's trying to be the top 1 to 5 headers.
Right. All right, we're going to get to a quick break, and then we're going to come back and dive into this main card match.
Oh, man. All these guys are so talented, and then we've got the main course. These appetizers are wild.
Yep.
Our livelihood revolves around the longevity of our horses. They're athletes, and we got to take care of them, too.
And that's why we want to give them the very best thing we can, keeping them sound and feeling fresh. There's no sugars, no starches, no fillers. It's 100% amino acids. You feed it daily, so it's just great all around.
It made us believers. Just for muscle soreness and building their legs up and helping those horses recover faster is huge, not only for their well-being, but for our success.
Equinety, helping horses worldwide.
All right, well, we are back. We're going to break down this main card match. Remember, this is only available at xfactorroping.com. We've talked about the undercard teams. It's time to dive into the main card match. We've got Clint Summers, Caleb Driggers matching Coleman Proctor and Wesley Thorpe. How it's set up, Clint Summers will be heading when Wesley Thorpe is heading. So you kind of have those two guys going against each other, and then it's going to be Coleman Proctor heading against Caleb Driggers. So that's kind of how it all gets started. Clint Summers, he's the only guy here that's made the NFR on both ends tonight, right?
Well, that's what's so amazing about this deal. When you pit the best of the best against one another in these setups, I'm looking back and forth on this deal, and it's like it's so undecisive. It's like vanilla or chocolate, but you can't have both. But back to that, man. Clint Summers is so accomplished, and his numbers are really high. He will build at any given time the single best herd of horses on either end in his event. So within that, when we look at him in the heading, man, perfection. Like this guy, fundamentally one of the most sound guys. He's placed at a lot, if not all, of the major opens. He's made the national finals rodeo. He looked really good there. That building out there, there's not that many to toot my partner's horn. There's not that many Andrew Wards that show up, set the record their first time out there. There's Andrew and Tanner.
Right.
He only got it for a year, but it's like, but man, as soon as Clint got tapped off out there, I thought he was one of the guys at the national finals. On the healing level, he made so many close calls, so many times that third quarter, fourth quarter of the season, he's supposed to be making the national finals, and things just didn't quite work out for him. But so accomplished. When I was early in the IPRA, he was also winning IPRA World Championship, so I've got to see this guy heal a lot. He's going to err on the side of catching on the heel side. On the head side, his run is so sharp that while it may not look quite like some of your more aggressive headers in the style, he is a very fast guy. Goes further down the arena, puts it on there tighter, puts the saddle horn tight. All of his horses work like they deserve awards, and they have had awards. And then he makes them easy to heel back there. And to say that he's less accomplished than Driggers. You know, he's got NFR qualifications on both sides, but then he's paired up with what could be. I mean, I think if we go and vote right here, I mean, Driggers is probably the most well-rounded switch ender in team roping. He's got the accomplishments on the heel side are less naturally because he's been busy winning world championships, every major, every rodeo, setting records in the heading for so long. But he's also spent a season rodeoing as a healer.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that's so unique about Caleb, right? Is he's showing horses. He's heading and heeling. He's on a big variety of horses. A lot of guys just kind of like spectators probably don't realize this as much, but he used to just kind of be a bomber, a real aggressive header. Now he can run
so
in.
Versatile.
Yeah, he's got every shot in the book heading.
Well, you know, when we started off this deal and we talked about the undercard, you know, you've got guys who define seasons, decades in the sport, and you know, Driggers is one of the guys that's defining this sport right now in the heading. You know, he's in a very similar way to what we were talking about with Jade, but you know, Driggers is an animal. He's got at same thing as Summers any given time. His arsenal of horses is the best in the world. And also the biggest. Somebody was talking the other day, said he had 95 horses standing at the house right now. Like, I don't have 25 horses standing around at any given time. But this guy is putting into the breeding program. He's putting into the showing program. He is building this sport literally from the bottom up. And he's one of the fastest guys on either end. He's one of the most consistent guys on either end. You know, we've talked about the undercard, and we got guys that it wouldn't surprise me if they made the finals in the healing. The reason this guy won't make the finals in the healing is because he's not going to heal, and that's all that it takes. Because his horsemanship, you know, I know in high school he rode cutters. He's, you know, you can just tell by the way. If you want to pause it right there, like one thing special about this guy, man, this area right here is in contact with his horse all the time. You know, he's using his legs. You'll even notice, like here, this is Frosty. This is a horse that came from Chad. He went on and sold to Riley Minor. Riley's been having some success, but man, this horse doesn't take a lot of work. Notice he's got his toes forward. Like, he's not putting his spurs on him. He's just helping this horse. He's just lifting him up. But man, this guy, he is one with his horse. Whatever he's riding, when he's heading, he's heeling. You don't find him up over the saddle horn doing whatever. He's on his horse. He's making contact. His horses don't stress a lot. They know what he's looking for. You know, this is probably a 4 or 5 year old right here that he's winning shows. But same thing, man, just look at how he stays in contact with that saddle, stays down, stays with the horse, and that horse becomes an extension of his legs. You know, if we wanted to, you know, poke fun at him, his legs didn't grow very much, so he got tall horses. But no, he just stays with the animal. You know, naturally that's Junior, and I'm not going to pick on Junior. He's one of my best friends, but Junior's a little bit more of an animal up there. Great horseman, but you know, he's going to be all over his horse. But Driggers right there is throwing half of an extra long rope, and then just staying right in the middle, setting everything up for his partner, and I think that's what he's going to do with Clint. I've seen him and Clint. I've seen him head, I've seen him heel, I've seen him rope together, and I think both them guys are going to do good. And man, right there, you know, that horse looks just a little green. Maybe that ground's a little shallow out there, slides through the turn, not the easiest thing that can happen. But just look at how he's down, he's level, he's got a great swing. Man, that's the highest level healing right there. If you took that out, you shadowed it, and you said, hey, this is the best healer we've got to offer, nobody's going to be surprised, because, I mean, what more do you want? You know, he's like calling Jade had a baby right there.
Yeah, very, very well-rounded. You know, this is some footage from the Royal Crown where you get to watch him actually show heel horses.
Yep.
This is just recently went and helped at the timed event.
Yep.
You know, Caleb, it's unreal where he's at and where he's accomplished with his roping. You know,
when we were talking about the undercard, I'm talking about Jade reading cattle. Jade's horsemanship's high. The way he reads cattle and puts his horses in a spot is amazing. To me, all I got to do to describe Driggers is you flip that around and you say he rides his horse. He sets his horse good, whether that's heading him from his whole rope away or running all the way in there and right to left the horns. I feel like he sets a horse so good, and then he reads cattle secondarily. And I think that's what makes him one of the GOATs of this sport, is that his deal initiates with the horse, and then no one beats this guy, dummy roping, whatever. Like his ability with the rope is as high or higher than anyone else. And, he's just ruthless. So within that, I know we're fixing to go to a team that I'm fixing to say a lot of the same things. But within that, man.
Hold on right quick. I'd like to ask this question because when you put Clint and Caleb on paper and look at it, these guys look like the favorites.
Yep.
And
when you look at one team,
when
you're
you
like,
look at
who beats this team? Build it.
Yeah.
I got nothing for you, man.
They're a really tough team.
Yeah.
So you're in Coleman and Wesley's shoes.
Sure.
What's the game plan on beating a team like this in this 15-head match? Is there a strategy you kind of talk about or go with, or what do you personally
from the outside?
Think? Yeah.
From the outside, what I'm going to tell you that sounds crazy is if Coleman and Wesley will show up and be Coleman and Wesley, they're supposed to win.
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying that is, Coleman, he's actually my second partner right now. This is the only guy that's full-time pro rodeoed heading for Rich Skelton, full-time pro rodeoed heeling for Speed Williams. And in case some people have forgot those names, they've got every record in the book still. And Caleb and Junior are 6 years. If they can beat all of us another 6 years in a row, they'll catch up with them and still be a year behind. But man, Coleman Proctor has accomplished everything but the gold buckle in the heading. He's devoted a lot of time to the heeling. He's another one of those guys. Like when we look at this list, he was one of the guys up there heading and heeling at the timed events. These guys, they sought out the guys who they think can catch and give them a competitive edge. Coleman is so offensive on both ends. He's such a gamer and so competitive. That the part to me, if I'm putting him in there, the deal with Driggers, if they go to the same part of the arena to make these runs, Coleman beats Driggers, and a part of that, I've healed for Coleman a lot. It's a lot like the way that I heal for Andrew. A lot of that comes back from Speed Williams and the way he was able to put him in the transition. And I know literally Driggers is set over there and camped with Speedy too, but the deal with Coleman, what he's so good about is he's so good about getting the front half of the steer that first stride and keeping everything in motion. So Coleman's got one of the fastest runs wherever it happens. Now, if he throws two swings after Driggers is beating him. But the part to me is if he shows up and he's his best self, I think he is so competitive. And Coleman is one of those guys I heard years ago that when you show up on game day, you're either 15% better, you're 15% worse than you are at home. And to me, Coleman is one of those guys that he very seldom goes and makes his runs and then gets beat out. Right. So it's up to him, to me, to show up and be the same guy that he is day in and day out. Does Coleman does Driggers have an advantage? I say yes. But what I come back to on that is we have to show up, whatever tools we got to play those to our advantage. So for me, Coleman is one of the scoringest guys in the business. He sets the barrier up at his house, and he goes at it for 100 steers in a row. A lot of guys don't go to the trouble of getting off their horse, raking the box, and setting the barrier up, but he does. He's going to have to win this on scoring, and he's going to win this on making his run happen out there in the arena. And within that, I think that's his opportunity to do it. Driggers is going to, in my opinion, he's going to win it off of horsemanship and reach. If this is a reaching contest on the ground, advantage Driggers, but it isn't. The other thing we got to throw in there is what are these guys going to bring horse-wise? Both Coleman and Driggers, but also what is Wesley going to show up and head on? And rumor has it, this is the one.
This horse right here. So
yeah.
Let's talk about Wesley, because he's one of those guys that he's kind of similar to Doug and Dustin.
Yeah, you want to talk about gamer. You want to talk about somebody showing up. My early understanding, my early stuff I hear about with Wesley, crossfire rule, USTRC. He's 12, he's 14, he's 15 years old. He's roping in the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and open. And he's winning in every single one. He's heading, he's heeling, maybe on the same horse. Wesley Thorpe is the winningest guy in USTRC history, jackpot team roping. this is the money man, and jump ride, get on whatever horse, whenever, ride him as good, win as much. The thing with Wesley, to me, like if I'm going to come back to, I was talking about how Driggers like sets a horse, man, Wesley sets a horse so good. A deal with Wesley is he's a little bit of like two swings aren't the same. Like he does a lot of modification, a lot of adjustment with his rope. There's times when I would look at a run and I would say, man, I would adjust my horsemanship a little bit so that my rope will work perfect. Wesley's going to lean a little in the direction of I'm going to adjust this classic rope so that I can heel this steer perfect from maybe not the best position. When it comes to a deal like today, where he's trying to beat the best switch in team in the world, he's going to have to do some roping, especially he's jump riding a horse. Man, the thing I come back to Wesley is like, I've watched him, he showed up against 150 teams in the American semifinals at Fort Worth a few years ago and maybe wins 3 out of 4 holes in the first day money. Comes over there and goes 3-3-3-5, maybe heading for Driggers at Cowtown Coliseum. As far as I know, he's the only guy to make the American on both ends the same year, and qualified two different ways, maybe one exemption and one qualification. This guy he's in a bit of a category of his own, not necessarily above, below, but somewhere in the middle of all of team roping. Wesley is a guy that virtually anybody at any level that's willing to put in the effort could make a living with. Head, heel, go to the amateur rodeos, go to the pro rodeos, go to the jackpots, go to the pasture roping. You cannot count this guy out. And the thing that I think this really special about the way we've built these teams, Caleb and Junior are Southeast. Their earliest experiences are really similar. The way they started roping, the heading and the heeling down there, kind of like we talked about earlier with Canada. The thing I'm seeing with Coleman and Wesley, their season, the way they started, Coleman was Oklahoma, Wesley was Texas, and Coleman's been around a little, Missouri, whatever. But I think a big thing here is the seasons that these guys are having in rodeo, the seasons that they're having in life. I think a lot of that stuff comes into play when we're trying to figure out what are these guys thinking here. And so within that, we got Driggers coming right off a world championship. He's married. He's putting pretty much everything into his business right now. As far as I know, they don't have any kids on the way, and he's really setting up his future. Summers has got a new baby on the ground, but he's actually a little early in this heading career. It wouldn't be that surprising if somebody rodeoed for 2, 3, 4 years before they made the national finals. He's already made it. He also missed it. So I think he's in a spot a little bit of, he's trying to earn his stripes graduating up the list. I think Coleman, I don't think he's close to the end of his career, but on years, he's got more years in this game than any of these other guys. And he's exactly in the middle. And that's the deal I see with Coleman and Wesley is Clint being kind of the younger of this crew with no championships. Driggers has got the championships. I feel like Coleman and Wesley, they hit right in the middle of that deal. So, when you're picking teams, it's hard not to pick the Buckles right off the bat, right? And then, Summers may get picked 4th out of this deal, and he's a guy that's made the national finals twice. But Wesley's got a Buckle. He's got accolades across the board, huge earnings. And the biggest deal, I think, when it comes back to this, if we showed up and there was one head horse and one heel horse, and both these teams took turn, they headed and heeled on these same horses, I literally have no idea where this is going to go. But I think something that's really going to show up, if Driggers shows up over here and he's riding a horse that deserves to be head horse of the year, a heel horse deserves to be heel horse of the year, and Clint catches the whole time, I'm having a really hard time figuring that deal out. Coleman, he's bringing his best, and he's heading on him, and Wesley's heading on him. And so that's a direction to me. If they're both going to ride that horse, then I think they have a big advantage. That horse is a nice horse. I've been seeing him go for a little over a year now. Got to heel for him a lot. And so I really like where they're going. And then, man, Wesley on the matches, he looked like the best healer in the history of healing the last match he was in. And so within that, I'm having a really hard time saying that the healing to me for Wesley it's not really going to show up. I think the healing's already been dealt with. If he gets along really good with that horse, starts going 0.0 at the barrier, he's going to be hard to keep up with because his rope handling is really good.
Yeah, I think that's the thing you're going to find out about Wesley Thorpe is he is a true gamer.
Yes.
There's a reason why he's won so much. And the things that he does, it's so subtle, but the little adjustments that he makes or what he does on head horses, heel horses, he's always putting himself in a spot to win. And I think that's what makes him so special.
Yeah, you just don't see Wesley, you don't see him battle with a horse. Like he'll ask nicely, he'll encourage, he'll tell him, he'll be direct, but you don't really see him ever get in a fight. And I think that's something that's really important to be at a super high level is, we're doing this as a team and I'm going to apply pressure over here to try to get you to go over there. But when you have the talent, when you've got the hand-eye coordination and the experience that Wesley has, you just become a veteran, you become a chameleon I'm going to modify my rope a little, like I said, to be able to catch this because I think my horse can do this one thing over and over and it might not be my favorite, but I can get my rope to do this other thing that's going to allow me to catch. And yeah, he's a guy I feel like, really close to Driggers' healing. If Wesley and Driggers had a good excuse for Wesley to head and Driggers to heal for a year, I just give them NFR buys already. Yeah. They're going to go get the horses, and that's a big deal. Is if I switch to heading tomorrow, frankly, I'm not sure where one head horse is going to come for me, and these guys they're going to have them in the barn, they're going to have them in the trailer, and when they show up next week, they're already a competitive team.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to be wrapping up this rundown. Guys, obviously this match will be videoed, hosted on xfactorroping.com. So go there, get your membership. Obviously, this is a unique lineup, buddy. I really appreciate you breaking these teams down and look forward to seeing where these matches all go tonight.
I'm so excited.
Thanks again.